First of all, thank you for joining us to this evening, late afternoon. It's very my pleasure to introduce to everyone the BMD Hub. Before starting, as Emma mentioned, I'd just be grateful if everybody can mute themselves, and just to inform everyone that we were planning to record this webinar. So if there is anyone against that, just let us know. Although I think that it's easier to go through the presentation if everybody is mute, I really see this as an interactive presentation and an interactive webinar, which is on the benefit of all the clinicians and industry involved and ourselves. So I hope to have left enough time at the end to really open a little bit the presentation to discussion and have the input from everyone. So really, this is focused on a new initiative that we have launched on the 29th of February, the Rare Disease Days, that is the BMD Hub. But I think that most of you are, are already well familiar with the brother of the BMD Hub, that is the DMD Hub. But I cannot talk about any hub in neuromuscular diseases, specifically in dystrophinopathy, without mentioning the DMD Hub. And I think it is important as a background to start really thinking about what the DMD Hub has achieved over the last few years in terms of infrastructure to, sorry, but they turned the slide automatically. Anyway. As an infrastructure to facilitate delivery of clinical research in Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and as a model to deliver clinical research in rare diseases. So as you probably know, the DMD Hub network is an established network that currently includes 11 sites across the UK that are capable and has the capacity to deliver clinical trial. The DMD Hub network and the DMD Hub infrastructure has been developed as really a one-stop shop for industry who are interested to bring research into the UK. But it's not obviously a resource only for industry, it's really been developed as a multi-stakeholder resource, which includes the patient, sites, and obviously industry. And it's really an academic project that base the implementation of clinical trial readiness through sharing knowledge and expertise. A lot has been achieved since 2016 within the DMD Hub on different aspects in a way. First of all is the engagement with industry and therefore with the people who bring the research in the UK. We have 16 companies and 5 CRO that have been delivered research in the UK through the DMD Hub. Has also supported sites in facilitated delivery of clinical trial, providing funding, but also providing educational and connection and education on how to set up and deliver clinical trial in DMD. And that's a unique resource because all of the infrastructure has been successful, and the success is measured by the fact that we have an increased number of boys with Duchenne muscular dystrophy that are enrolled in clinical trial. And even more, the success of the DMD Hub has been demonstrated by the fact that there is a general reporting that the clinical trial activity in the UK has dropped over the last few years, as not only a result, obviously, of the COVID, but actually before of then with Brexit. And the DMD Hub has actually demonstrated that creating the infrastructure in the UK to facilitate research has led in a maintenance in terms of and actually an increase in clinical trial, number of clinical trial and number of patients in clinical trial in the UK, which has been maintained after COVID. But we are here not to talk about the DMD Hub, but to talk about the BMD Hub, so the Becker Muscular Dystrophy Hub. And why are we talking about Becker muscular dystrophy is that over the last, for several years, the focus of clinical research and clinical trial has been limited to Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Over the last few years, we have an increased number of clinical trials involving other neuromuscular diseases, and more recently in clinical trial focusing on Becker muscular dystrophy. But also in the context of what is Becker muscular dystrophy and what is the link between Duchenne and Becker muscular dystrophy. They obviously both appertain of the family of the dystrophinopathy due to mutation in the DMD gene. And historically, Duchenne and Becker have been really seen as two different conditions, one in pediatric and one predominantly in adult. But the reality is that they are not two independent conditions, but is really a spectrum of the same condition, from the most severe phenotype with Duchenne muscular dystrophy to the very variable phenotype of Becker muscular dystrophy. But with this historical differentiation between DMD and BMD has led a little bit to Becker muscular dystrophy in isolation, because they did not attract as much interest as the Duchenne muscular dystrophy, but on the other hand, they didn't fit even in the criteria, let's say, of a limb-girdle muscular dystrophy. And I think that this has generated some issues that I will mention at the end of my presentation. But what is the situation? Why we here, when we're talking about increased research in Becker muscular dystrophy, I just want to give a very, very brief overview of the clinical trial run in Becker muscular dystrophy over the last few years. And I start with the Edgewise Therapeutics clinical trial, that is the Canyon, which is a phase 2b study led by Edgewise, which target adult and adolescents with Becker muscular dystrophy. And this is a phase 2 study to demonstrate safety and efficacy of ADG 5506. The study is being run in the UK, is currently fully enrolled, and there were 2 clinical sites in the UK, Newcastle and London, that are continuing to follow up this patient. But although this study has completed the enrollment, it's exciting for me to report that we are now ready to set up an extension of the study called Grand Canyon, which aim to recruit a much higher number of adults with Becker muscular dystrophy, up to 120 ambulant patients. And with 3 sites ready to open in the UK, that are Newcastle, Manchester, and London, and hopefully will open to enrollment and recruitment very soon. But there are more clinical trials in Becker muscular dystrophy running in the UK. This is the BIND Part 1 and Part 2, which is a clinical trial run in Newcastle and London, which aim to investigate the brain involvement in dystrophinopathy, covering the full spectrum of dystrophinopathy from Duchenne to Becker muscular dystrophy. Both studies enroll very high number of patients. BIND 1 is a predominantly questionnaire-based study. BIND 2 is a study that wants to investigate the cognitive pattern and the brain involvement in patients with Becker and Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And these studies are open to recruitment. Another study still focusing on a better understanding of observational trial to better understand the behavioral and emotional problem in dystrophinopathy is currently recruited in London, is the D-Brain, again enroll patients both with Duchenne muscular dystrophy and Becker muscular dystrophy. More observational studies, however, are coming to Becker muscular dystrophy to highlight the importance and the interest to better characterize Becker muscular dystrophy, both because, again, as Edgewise has demonstrated, that there is an increased interest in developing new interventional and new potential therapeutic approach for Becker muscular dystrophy, but also because if we think about the current treatment for Duchenne muscular dystrophy targeting the genetic cause of Duchenne muscular dystrophy, all talking about changing a dystrophin DMD gene mutation leading to a DMD phenotype to an in-frame mutation. And therefore, it's likely that this, let's say, the definition between Duchenne and Becker muscular dystrophy will become thinner and thinner in the upcoming years. So there is an increased interest in understanding the natural history of Becker muscular dystrophy, and Newcastle is taking part in this international natural history study in Becker muscular dystrophy called GRASP. who is hopefully open to recruit, or will open to recruit soon. But looking a little bit more globally, there are other clinical trials enrolling in Becker muscular dystrophy, and here I mentioned the Revergen biopharma study with Van Morelen in Becker muscular dystrophy that is currently enrolling patients in Italy, Padova, and in the US in Pittsburgh. But these are all, let's say, clinical trials that have been currently open. There was probably one of the first clinic. There was a previous natural history study that was run also in the UK. That was the Synergy, and a clinical trial with Givinostat was run previously in Italy and in the Netherlands in Becker muscular dystrophy. So there is definitely an increased number of clinical trials in Becker muscular dystrophy over the past 5 years. So the increased number of clinical trials in Becker muscular dystrophy, but also, as I will mention, a general interest in clinical trial in dystrophinopathy, not only focusing on pediatric cases, but also in the adult population, really highlight how timely is to the development of a network to support the delivery of clinical trial and clinical research in these larger cohort of patients. And then is when we thought about taking the DMD development of the DMD Hub experience into the Becker muscular dystrophy hub, and really learning from the lesson learned through the DMD Hub and how can this be transferred and implemented in a different muscular disease, although very similar. So the Becker muscular dystrophy hub is really developed in the changed landscape with an increased interest in research in Becker muscular dystrophy, but also in the different landscape on patients with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, with an increased number of clinical trials in Duchenne muscular dystrophy that also enroll the adult population. Is really trying to take the experience built with the DMD Hub network to create a similar infrastructure to cover pediatric and adult centers capable and with the capacity to deliver clinical trials in Becker muscular dystrophy. And we think that is really the right time because there is an appetite from clinician industry to this new area of research. What are the aim of the BMD Hub network is to facilitate access to clinical trial for patients with Becker muscular dystrophy, to support sites that are interested in deliver clinical trial in Becker muscular dystrophy. It's part of the clinical trial more general approach about clinical trial readiness, but to address industry needs and make the UK as an attractive place to bring clinical trial in the UK. But it's also a broader view about the strong link between clinical trials and clinical care. And we really cannot bring clinical research if we do not implement care. But we also, as the Duchenne field has demonstrated, we really learn from research to implement care. And create this strong connection from the beginning can be very, very important. So what are the general objective of the Becker muscular dystrophy hub? As I mentioned, and how we are here tonight. I mean, this is the first, hopefully, of a series of meeting and call or webinar to really create a network of clinician and healthcare professional and clinical trial coordinator who have a specific interest for delivering clinical trials in Becker muscular dystrophy and in more generally in dystrophinopathies. The aim is to really create a network of sites and support the sites to facilitate the clinical trial readiness. Is also to try to provide accurate, reliable, and updated information about ongoing clinical trials and clinical research project in Becker muscular dystrophy, as we always have identified the lack of knowledge or awareness as a major gap, not only for the patient community, but also for clinicians. But we are also aware that it's very difficult to keep us up to date in any single area of research. So develop a clear, reliable source of information can facilitate and be useful not only for the patient community, but also clinicians. We want to establish the central recruitment database, which I will present a little bit more later. We want really to work together with the patient community and patient organization to improve the communication and the awareness and dissemination of information through the patient community. We also want to know if learning from the network of sites, the network of clinician and healthcare professionals, and also from the implementation of clinical research in Becker muscular dystrophy, whether we can address a major gap in the care of this patient, that is the drafting of care guidelines for BMD. Even be more ambitious is whether we can create also to start to collect real-world data on Becker muscular dystrophy, because we know that this is an important component that can inform a clinical trial design, can inform use as a control group, and for post-marketing. So how can we get ready to deliver this in a feasible situation without asking the impossible to sites in this very busy clinic? But we also want to explore the interest and the feasibility to establish a Becker muscular dystrophy patient network, which currently does not exist. So where are we now? I'm very proud to say that on the 29th of February, we launched the the Becker muscular dystrophy hub with two initiative. One is the launch of the website and the launch of the central recruitment database that are both currently live. So the Becker muscular dystrophy hub website is really a source of information to engage with the multi-stakeholder. So it's a source that is predominantly designed for patients, but include also information that can be useful for clinicians, for other healthcare professional, as well as industry. It's really being developed as a tool of education and is really easily accessible on that link. Within the website, we have also developed the Becker muscular dystrophy trial finder, similar for who is aware or is familiar with the Duchenne clinical trial finder. This again is an accessible resource where we report information about ongoing clinical trial, focusing on the clinical trial that are run or are coming in the UK, but with an overview of all the research that is going on in Becker muscular dystrophy worldwide. The clinical trial finder provides general information about the clinical trial, what is the background, what is the intervention, whether it's an interventional study or an observational study, provide information about the main inclusion-exclusion criteria and the key outcome measures, but also provide in this column, that is the summary, an update about where the trial status in terms of whether it's open to enrollment or is close to enrollment, where the study is run, who is the sponsor, again, the main inclusion criteria or main key aspects of the clinical trial. And this is really as an easy accessible source for patients who are interested to take part in clinical trial, but also for clinicians who might be interrogated about clinical trial option in Becker muscular dystrophy. We also, as I mentioned, the website also want to be a source of education and of resources. And part of on the clinical trial on the website, we also reported the link to an initiative that was developed by Anna Mech in collaboration with the TreatMD in terms of a description and understanding of the most common outcome measures that are used in neuromuscular disorder. And this can be a useful source for patients to understand which tests they will be asked to do either in clinical or in clinical trial, but also is a source for healthcare professionals to become more familiar with these outcome measures. As I mentioned, as part of the launch of the BMD Hub, we launched also the BMD Hub Central Recruitment Database. This is a centrally coordinated database that collects information about people with confirmed diagnosis of Becker muscular dystrophy who are interested in taking part in clinical trial. It's coordinated by the John Walton Muscular Dystrophy Research Center. The project has been funded by Edgewise Therapeutic as a grant, which will run for 2 years in this pilot phase, and then with the aim and hopefully securing funding for a longer-term continuation of the project if successful. The Clinical Trial Finder is really a patient-led database. So only the patient can initiate the registration at this stage. Once they sign up, they need to provide some very general and relatively short answer to a relatively short questionnaire. But within the registration, they provide the consent for the Central Recruitment Database team to share information with healthcare professionals, both at their clinical site and the clinical trial sites, to help their enrollment in clinical trials. So the information that we collect are really not specific for a registry. It's a database that is focused on eligibility for clinical trials. So we do not want to reinvent the wheel or repeat other initiatives. So we collect information that can really help us to understand whether a specific person is eligible for ongoing clinical trial. Is open to all patients in the UK. At the moment, we are not open to patients from abroad, but any patient for any age can register, although children under the age of 16 need to be registered by their parent or guardian. We specify that registering in the database does not mean that the person will be enrolled in a clinical trial, but just offer the opportunity to take part in a clinical trial if they meet the eligibility criteria, and highlight the limited recruitment target in clinical trial and try to explain this limitation. How does it work from the let's say from the registration point of view? Once the patient is registered, any clinical trial site who is looking for patient potentially eligible for a clinical trial can send a request to the Central Recruitment Database. The request is reviewed by and approved by the steering committee, and if approved, the Central Recruitment Database project manager will review the list of patients that are on the register and meet the eligibility criteria, the main eligibility criteria based on the information that are available on clinicaltrial.gov and on the Clinical Trial Finder. Once the patient, a potential match, let's say, has been identified, the referral is sent back to the clinical trial site that has requested the information. An important component is that at that time, the clinical trial site will be as the consent from the patient for them to contact directly the clinician who is providing the care to the patient to confirm eligibility and confirm, for example, the feasibility for this patient to take part in the clinical trial. And if that discussion is positive, then the clinical trial sites will get in touch with the patient itself and then plan screening. It is possible that once the conversation between the clinical trial site and the clinical care site match for eligibility criteria, it's highlighted that for whatever reason the patient is not eligible, and at that point the patient will be sent back to the Central Recruitment Database, but the patient has not been involved in this conversation. If the patient seems to meet the eligibility criteria, then the clinical trial site will get in touch with the patient, and if interested, will arrange a screening and confirm eligibility. The outcome of this conversation is feedback to the Central Recruitment Database, so the patient will be removed, let's say, from the Central Recruitment Database pool if is enrolled in a clinical trial, or will be kept if is, for whatever reason, does not meet the eligibility criteria. From the clinical side, let's say the involvement of the clinical site in this process is to confirm the diagnosis. So once the patient is registered in the central recruitment database, a request is sent to the patient to provide copy of their genetic diagnosis. And the patient might then get in touch with their local clinician in order to have that copy. And obviously to confirm the eligibility when conducted by a clinical trial site. What is, however, the plan when we talk about the Becker Muscular Dystrophy Hub? That is a network of sites. And in the UK, I think that is a little bit of a strange situation where we can say that we already have a network, or maybe we need to establish a network, or we need really to coordinate that network in terms of clinical trial delivery. For clinical trial delivery, as I mentioned, with the Edgewise, we have currently 3 sites that have agreed to take part in the Grand Canyon study, Newcastle, Manchester, London, as the first 3 adult clinical trial site delivering clinical trial in Becker muscular dystrophy. But obviously, we have a much bigger scenario, and learning from the experience of the BMD Hub, when we started from a very small number of sites able and capable to deliver clinical trials, this number has progressively expanded to the current number of 11 sites, but also with an increased engagement of the clinical site as part of the pediatric North Star network, which are, first of all the clinical trial sites are also North Star sites, but we are also considering this strong link between the care and the clinical trial delivery. And now is really to expand to the adult sites. We are lucky enough again in the UK to have the adult North Star network that create the perfect, let's say, environment to deliver clinical care, and then identify sites that have an interest and again the capacity and capability to deliver clinical research. These are the members of the BMD Hub Steering Committee, who probably you all know, but is Dr. Michela from Glasgow, Professor Ross Quillivan from London, and Professor Tracy Willis from Oswestry. Dr. Maria Farrugia and Professor Ross Quillivan work predominantly in adult, and Professor Tracy Willis is a pediatric neurologist following both adult and pediatric patients. But we also have a very strong engagement within the steering committee from the patient community and patient advocacy, with Kate Adcock from Muscular Dystrophy UK, Suzanne Glover from Pathfinder Neuromuscular Alliance, and Emily Rubin from Duchenne UK. I just wanted to spend a little bit of time also to focus on other specific aspects of Becker muscular dystrophy, which might differ in a way from the context of Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and we need to think about when developing the BMD Hub, both in terms of research and care. Becker muscular dystrophy is a much more variable condition, as you all know, with different aspects and different presentation. And these have, for me, 2 major implications. First of all, we cannot bring clinical trial and increase accessibility to clinical trial in Becker muscular dystrophy if we do not increase the awareness of Becker muscular dystrophy and increase the diagnosis of Becker muscular dystrophy. So these things go together. But also open several opportunities, but also several opportunities of collaboration, because some of these patients might not actually be known to a neuromuscular center, but might be seen in other departments and need to be engaged from the beginning. And as I mentioned at the beginning, another opportunity here is really to say that when we talk about research, we also need talking about standard of care. And realistically, we do not have international standardized assessment and care guidelines for Becker muscular dystrophy. And I think that this could be a great network to try to think about it and find an agreement in the UK to then take internationally. But another point that I want to mention is that over the last few years, there has also been an increased number of clinical trials in Duchenne muscular dystrophy involving the older patient. For several years, Em and I have been talking about developing the adult DMD Hub network. There's always been difficult. And for several reasons. First of all, although there is an increased number of clinical trials enrolling adults with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, it's also true that there are very limited number of trials that enroll only adults with Duchenne muscular dystrophy in the UK. And the number of patients enrolling in individual study is very, very small. So establishing a DMD adult network has been very difficult when we do not have clinical trial clearly targeting this population coming to the UK. But there is also another problem, that clinical trial in Duchenne muscular dystrophy has been open for several years, and for anyone who has experience with clinical trial know that once study open, it never ends. So we have several patients that have been enrolled in clinical trial in their pediatric age, but now they are moving to transition and adult, and we have a real problem in the UK about where and how do we move these patients. So maybe this is really an opportunity to bring Duchenne muscular dystrophy and Becker muscular dystrophy together again, and thinking about how can we use the BMD Hub to support also the development and establishment of a network of sites that are able to deliver clinical trial in the transition and adult population with Becker muscular dystrophy or Duchenne muscular dystrophy and potentially any other neuromuscular disease. So I came out to the valley. So what do I think about what are the challenges of opening this new project in Becker muscular dystrophy? But also what are the opportunities? And it's always nice when you start writing them down, the opportunities are more than the challenges. So in terms of the challenges, I think that one of the strengths of the DMD Hub program is that from the beginning, we have a very proactive engagement and collaboration with the patient community through Duchenne UK. And this has been a unique opportunity for us to really identify what were the patient needs and to deliver the program and engage with the patient community, targeting their needs, but also ensuring that what we developed was well disseminated and increased the awareness of the program itself. Duchenne UK help us to design it and to deliver it. And we don't have that established patient community in Becker muscular dystrophy. There are, as mentioned, we have tried to engage with at least 3 patient organizations that are directly or indirectly involved with Becker muscular dystrophy, but probably the voice is not as strong as in Duchenne muscular dystrophy. I'm also aware that Becker muscular dystrophy itself as a cohort of patients is less engaged with research compared to Duchenne muscular dystrophy and other diseases. For several reasons, obviously we are talking about adults who has their own life in terms of work, in terms of family, in terms of other commitment, but also the cognitive aspects of Becker muscular dystrophy means that their engagement can be affected from time to time. And the third challenge is the sustainability. It's very encouraging to see more clinical trial coming up in Becker muscular dystrophy. As I mentioned at the beginning, the BMD Hub has been fully funded by Edgewise Therapeutic that has generally provided us with funding to deliver this project over the next 2 years. But obviously, when you start a new project, is how much interest and how much where funding will come to maintain the infrastructure long term. But I think that it's really opened huge opportunities, really learning from the DMD experience, making a success transferable to other disease area is always a great opportunity. And again, as I mentioned, is also to say how the BMD Hub can be used to also create the DMD adult network and how can we work together on this. I think that overall, when the research comes in and a network is established, the project itself will lead to an increased awareness of Becker muscular dystrophy and therefore, and hopefully, an improvement in terms of early recognition, diagnosis, and care. As I mentioned, we will facilitate the clinical trial across transition and adulthood, both in Duchenne and Becker muscular dystrophy. Hopefully, we'll really help to explore the feasibility of establishing a patient community specific for Becker muscular dystrophy to move the field forward. and will give an opportunity to develop standardized assessment and care guidelines, but also starting thinking about how can we collect real-world data, and they put there as the North Star model or the RICH model, but how can we, now that we have a few examples, really learn again from the experience and develop something that is more sustainable long-term and across diseases. So what are we asking in a way is to be with us and to do this journey with us in terms of make the most use of the resources that have been developed in terms of the website. And again, not only for patient, but also for healthcare professional. Is also to contribute to the success of the BMD Hub Central Recruitment Database, both responding and confirming eligibility criteria and the genetic diagnosis, and hopefully be part of the network. So express your interest in be part both of the clinical network or of the clinical trial networks. Either say I'm more focused on clinic, I'm not at this point interested in clinical trial, but we still really want to create that community and that professional network. And it's always from clinic, we learn. Clinic is a key point to deliver research, and research can implement care. So we are in the situation where we would like to avoid the division between these two contexts and bring everyone on board. But if anyone is interested in potentially becoming a clinical trial site for future trial, that is where I would like to have that voiced. But most importantly is really to increase awareness of this initiative in terms of the resources and in terms of the central recruitment database among other clinicians, but also and specifically among the patient community. And this is really a little bit of a request, because is how can we make sure that the patient community is informed about the initiative, is informed about the central recruitment database, and how can we make sure that the patients who are interested in clinical research find their voice and find the resources that have been made available, but also how can we face these potential low engagement from this patient community? How can we learn from your experience with patient in order to make the resources fit for purpose? So at the end of the day, resources for patient. As I mentioned, we have engaged with the patient community, Pathfinder, Duchenne UK, and MD UK. We have prepared some flyers that are this one about the central recruitment database. We have printed copies, which we would be more than happy to send to individual sites, either to have available in their clinical setting, or to enclose in their clinical letter, or ideally to proactively send to every patient, follow up at the specific center with Becker muscular dystrophy. But also, what else? We are planning to have a webinar that will be focused for patients. It was supposed to be today, but we decided to have an engagement phase before planning the webinar. And this can be done on a regular basis, but any suggestion, recommendation, or anything that you think that either nationally or at your individual site could work to increase awareness of the initiative, please don't hesitate to get in touch. So nothing is possible without you. So that is where we are. And I think that hopefully we have a little bit of time for any question, comment, or anything.
Michela, can you see the hands, or is it helpful if I let you know who's got the hand up?
Yeah, maybe it's easier.
Okay. Janet from Manchester.
Hi, Michela. I just was wondering if there was going to be a leaflet similar to the BMD Hub leaflet, so we can give it out to our Becker muscular dystrophy patients.
Yes, so we have a flyer where we present both the central recruitment database and the BMD Hub website. And we would be more than happy to send copies directly to you to have in clinic, or I don't know if you will be able to, again, send directly to the patient or have them more available in the clinic. But yes, definitely happy to send them.
Yes, that's great. Thank you. Do you want my email? I'll put it in the chat.
Exactly. I would say if anyone do we have the email or everybody who has joined?
I think so, because they signed up. So we should have it, but I have your email anyway, Janet.
Oh, great. Thank you.
But if anyone who would like to have I think that we will send him anyway, but it would be nice to have a proactive approach to say, yes, please send the leaflet, or especially to say, send the leaflet, and if you can tell us to whom addressing the envelope would be useful.
So an easy way to contact us is through the generic email address, which I think you put up for a little while, Michela, but just to reiterate it, it's BMD Hub, all one word, at newcastle.ac.uk on the slide before you. Yeah, that first one.
Just to add on there, it would be great if you could put your address in the email as well, and we can send them directly to you.
Your postal address, yeah.
Yeah.
I think Hayley was next from Cardiff.
Hi, thanks. It's myself. I'm Rachel Salmon, both from the Cardiff team. Hi there. I think we've had our questions answered. It was just the same as Janet, really, to ask if we could.
Oh, you've muted yourself accidentally.
Hi. Yeah, it was just as Janet said, basically, could we have the flyers sent out to us, please? So I think that's already been answered.
Do you guys have any idea of the patient population for Becker that you have in Cardiff, or is that?
So we South East Wales.
Mm-hmm.
So with paediatrics and adults, we probably got about 35, 40.
Great.
Daddy, if you can, even in the email, just let us know more or less how many leaflet you would like, so we'll make sure that we have the right number. And again, two comments can be done either here, it's an open discussion, but also in the email. If you have any suggestion about how to reach out to patient, or let us know to say whether you would put the leaflet in clinic or send by letter, at least help us to track a little bit about how many patients we are reaching out. And we will give you regular update about where do we stand. So it's not just today's webinar, then we just run off, but it's keep you updated about if there is any change in the registration or the progress that we are doing in terms of engaging with site. But in the upcoming probably weeks and months, we will try to get in touch with individual sites to really engage more in terms of the establishment of the network, contact, and better understand individual interest.
Yeah. Michela, there's a question in the chat from Denise Wooding, who's asking, can OTs become involved with this?
Absolutely. So there is no, so if you think about, when we think about the DMD Hub, we engage with different professionals, from research nurses to clinician to clinical trial coordinator, but really with anyone who has contact with patient, and there are different level, more in terms of talking to patient about clinical research and clinical research opportunity. And this is not limited to any healthcare professional, but also in terms of any role in terms of contact with the sites to implement or delivering research or implement care. So what we would like to do is that in the upcoming months, we have we will appoint soon a BMD Hub project manager who will help me, Pietro, and actually I've not introduced the team, which is terrible. So I will do it at the end. Apologize for that. We'll get in touch to try really to understand who would be interested to take part in which remit and in which role, and then try to establish a regular catch-up to try to really to take this forward. And again, both in terms of clinical trial, which is the main focus, but also in terms of standard of care and implementation of care.
I can't see any of the questions in the chat, so I don't know if anybody else has got any in person.
And maybe I just say that, okay, so I don't know, I didn't even introduce myself, but it's terrible. So I'm Michela Guglieri, and I'm a consultant here in Newcastle, and I'm the PI, one of the PI of the DMD Hub, and I'm the PI of the BMD Hub. And I've been involved in clinical trial and clinical research in Duchenne muscular dystrophy for several years. I clinically see patients with Duchenne, Becker, but also other neuromuscular diseases, both in terms of diagnostic care and clinical research. And I was involved in a development of a program for increasing awareness of and diagnosis of Duchenne muscular dystrophy. But I'm not here alone, and I've not done anything of this without a magic team behind me. And I mentioned Pietro Riguzzi. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah, hi, hello everyone. I'm Pietro Riguzzi. I'm a neurologist. I've recently joined the muscle team here at the John Walton Muscular Dystrophy Research Center, and I've always had a great interest in neuromuscular disorders and in dystrophinopathies in particular. I come from Italy, and I trained with Elena Pegoraro and Luca Bello, who are great experts in dystrophinopathies, and now I'm a PhD student and at the same time clinical research associate under the supervision of Michela, and I'm very happy to be involved in this project, so thank you.
And then we have Phil.
Hi there, I'm Phil Camish. I work as part of the DMD Hub team. I work managing the DMD Hub Central Recruitment Database, which, as Michela mentioned, was the platform that we launched a couple of years ago in Duchenne, and what we've modelled the BMD Hub Central Recruitment Database on.
And last but not least, Emma. I think
Yeah.
everybody knows you.
Well, maybe. So I've been managing the DMD Hub for the last 8 years, obviously mainly involved with the paediatric sites in the UK, but as Michela mentioned, you know, the BMD Hub is modelled on the DMD Hub, so there's some lessons that we can learn there. We're not starting from scratch, but also, you know, obviously the synergies between the DMD Hub now moving more into the adult population with adult sites as well. We can see this initiative is going to work well both ways. So that's why I'm here as well.
There is also Jess, the our project
Thank you.
assistant. Yeah, Jessica.
No, sorry. Yeah. So I lost completely connection.
Are you
Jess,
there?
are you here?
I am. Hello.
So Jess,
I
are
just
you?
started last week, so I'm brand new, but yeah.
And Jess Elliott is the BMD Hub project assistant, so we'll get in touch, and is probably the one that will coordinate the shipment of the flyer, etc. So you will hear from her more and more in the upcoming weeks. And I want to highlight that this is really want to be across the pediatric and adult network. Although the current clinical trial in Becker muscular dystrophy are mainly focused on adult patients, I think that we really need to work together to be ready, and not just both in terms of healthcare professional, but also in terms of patient community. So we'll try to work across the two.